Hello, everyone. Welcome to PICRA. I'm going to introduce you guys to Miss Julia Ghazi, who's one of the few Iranian Canadian women lawyers practicing law, tax advisory, and controversy in Canada. Julia's practice involves resolving tax disputes with Canada Revenue Agency and provincial tax authorities from the initial audit stage to the final resolution of litigation. She focuses on real estate, GST, HST audits, tax advice, and tax litigation. Prior to joining EY Law, Julia practiced in the areas of property law, including real estate transaction, institution, and private mortgages, title matters, leasing, and landlord and tenant issues at Bay Street firm in Toronto. Mrs. Ghazi, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you're all doing very well and staying safe. Before I start my interview or my presentation about the COVID crisis, the key government programs, the CRA updates, and the real estate topics, I would like to thank the PICRA boards to give me this opportunity to participate. And I feel quite obligated to share my knowledge and my experience with the community, and hope that after this presentation, you all can get certain answers and certain clarifications. And if not, by all means, I have shared my contact information, so you can reach out to me, and I hope that I can resolve your case. Before I begin my presentation, before I start, the purpose of having a PowerPoint on this live webinar is that, first of all, is tax. Tax is very critical, it's very complicated, and there are so many dates and numbers that I would like to have it presented so all the guests and audience that can look at the dates in case if I make any mistake, so you all have a correct amount, date, time, and so on. Before I start my presentation, I would like to let all the guests know that this is only a general information, and it's just for information purpose, and I'm not going to give any legal advice or any legal opinion. If you have any questions or if your case you think is quite unique, please reach out to your tax professional, tax lawyer or accountant to solve your problem. Today at this talk, I'm going to talk about 3 segments. First, I'm going to talk about the CRA updates and what the CRA has been announcing since the beginning of COVID crisis and quarantine. And the second part would be talking about the government programs, federal and provincial. And the last is for Q&A. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So before I start, there are certain dates and times that are quite important for everybody who's attending this live webinar that I would like to bring to your attention. As you may know by now, the CRA immediately after the COVID crisis initiated this action and announced that for income tax filing, individuals, self-employed, corporations, trust, partnerships might know that their deadlines for filing have been changed or have been extended or deferred. So for certain information and for accurate information, I really invite you to visit the CRA website to see which entity or which part you are actually belonging to and when you have to apply for tax filing. For deferral, once you are actually going to make the payments for income tax, if you're not going to pay it, the deadline has been actually extended till September 1st, 2020. And as far as we have been told, there are no penalties and interest if you are going to pay by or before September 1st, 2020. For GST HST also is the same. If you're going to file your federal GST HST, you can still file your taxes if you're on an annual basis, a quarter basis, or a monthly basis. But if you're late for your filing, that's not a problem until and except if you're not filing it by June 30th, 2020. So these are the basically the announcements at the beginning of the COVID crisis that the CRA initiated and announced to everybody on their website that the deadlines have been changed. The key problem that I always get constantly on a daily basis is from prospect clients, and individuals that have been audited by the CRA. or have been in the process of appeal, objection and appeal, or in the process of collection. So what I'm going to announce and reassure you is that if you have been audited and you have been receiving questionnaires from the CRA auditor, that within certain days, you have to respond to the questionnaire that provides certain documents. Because of the COVID-19, all the audit activities have been on pause, and you are not responsible as of today to submit any documentations. You have to wait for the CRA auditors, or you have to wait to hear from your lawyer, your professional advisor, to get back to you and let you know when is the next deadline. In fact, you are not going to receive any reassessments, any proposal, or any activities, because the CRA offices are quite inoperative and they are not actually handling any audit at this time. For objection, appeals, and taxpayers' relief, I would say it's the same. All the objections and appeals are also on pause, and there are no activities for objections and appeals. And if your objection was due on March 18 or after March 18, your deadline now is June 30th, 2020. In fact, you have this deadline by June 30th, 2020 to submit your objection or your appeal to the specific division at the CRA. In terms of collection, if you have been reassessed and you have been receiving this letter or this call from the CRA collection officer that you have to pay or you owe this exact amount to the CRA, and then this crisis began, then at this point you're not obligated and you're not responsible, because most of the debt management centers are inoperative and they're closed. If you have any other questions or any other concerns, please reach out to your tax professional, tax advisor, and get more information about that. But as far as I know, there are no collection, no audits, no objection or anything from the CRA's departments. At this stage, I think I'm going to cover 3 areas that are quite comprehensive, and they're very controversial, and they have a lot of great areas that for any of the presentations, interviews, and talk that I have been giving to different organizations and associations, I've been actually being asked certain questions that are quite make sense, and unfortunately there are not certain vivid answers for them as of now, because these are urgent or emergency response plans, and the government is still working on it. That's why we have certain announcements on a daily basis, updates. The government is relaxing certain rules. As a matter of fact, if you are, after this webinar, if you are uncertain and something is not clear for you, that's not a problem. It does really make sense, because certain facts and certain things are not yet clarified. I'm going to talk about the 10% temporary wage subsidy. This is something that was initiated at the beginning of the COVID crisis. And this is, as it says, it's a 10% subsidy to the business owners, to employees, to employers, to actually prevent any layoff and to support their businesses, to function their business and keep their employees. This is only 10%, and it runs from only for 3 months. It runs from March 18 to June 2020. It covers only 10% of the wage that you are actually going to give to your employees. In fact, it is the maximum of it is $1,375, and the aggregate amount of it is $25,000, which means that each employee is only able to get $25,000 max under this program. How you're going to pay, it's like usual. You're going to pay your employee, and you're going to use this 10% subsidy, and then at the end of your year end, you're going to actually claim it from the CRA. This is a taxable income, and you're going to claim it at your taxation year in 2020. And the beauty, or the point at this program is that you must be operative to get this 10% base subsidy from the government. You must be active, and you must actually paying your staff the salary from March 18 to June 2020. Otherwise, you're not going to be eligible to apply under this program. Another program that is quite controversial, it's very specific, and it's quite challenging. It's SUS, which is very well known between tax lawyers, and is also known as Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. This is a 75% wage subsidy. It has started as of April 1st. However, they're going to retroactive it to March 15 to June 6, 2020. Amount of it, how they're going to calculate is that the government is going to cover 75% of the salaries or wage of your employees. And the rest of it, which is the 25%, is up to you. And the government is actually encouraging all the business owners that if you can afford, please do so and pay the rest of it. However, to be eligible to apply for this program, there are certain tests that you must actually comply and fit within this test to be eligible to apply for this wage subsidy, which is 75%. There are three periods or three sections sections that you can apply for this program. And they say that because of March, which was unprecedented, the month of March, they announced it later on, they relaxed it. It was originally 30%, and then they switched it to 15%. And they say that if your revenue declined in the month of March for 15%, that's fine. You just show us that your revenue in January, February this year, 2020, or March 2019 was actually this much, and now this year your revenue declined because of direct effect of COVID-19, and then you're eligible for the month of March. For the months of April and May, the test is 30%. If your revenue declined for 30%, and you're comparing it with last year, April 2019, or May 2019, or the January, February this year, then and you can actually prove that, then you're for sure eligible for that. And as the same as the temporary wage subsidy, SUS, which is the 75% wage subsidy, is a taxable income. Another points that are quite significant that I have to actually elaborate and emphasize on that is that the deadline application is for this wage subsidy program is September 30th, 2020. You can apply from your business portal online, and you have to actually answer certain questions, and then you have to attest and you have to acknowledge that all the information that you are providing to the CRA are quite accurate, correct, and they are right. And then you will be then getting all these subsidies from the government. However, the dangerous part of this wage subsidy is that if you are misleading, and if you are claiming or declaring wrong information, that's a really bad sign. And that's the fact that you're actually going to be flagged for audit. And the audit goes back to, it's up to the discretion of the CRA, but it goes back to 4 years. And they're asking for certain documentations, which is always bank statements, financial information, your book of business, your activities, and so many information that is actually jeopardizing your business activity. Hence, you have to be very careful when you're applying for this program. And if you think that you are not quite well fit within this program for the application, please seek legal advice or professional advice, whoever is experienced in tax, and then after that apply. Because if you're not eligible and then apply, not only you have to repay for this wage subsidy, but also the penalty is 50%. And not only that, you will be flagged forever, and you'll be audited on a random basis, desk audit, or like a very formal audit. And I don't think any of the businesses would like to actually face that kind of audit that is quite challenging and frustrating. Another interesting, amazing program for certain people that are actually deserving to get this benefit from the government is known as SERB, which is also stands for Canada Emergency Response Benefit. This is one of the big programs that the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau introduced at the beginning of this crisis to help the community, to help the people, individuals who have been unemployed and laid off. And this is a $500 per week for up to 16 weeks. And you can either apply from the CRA website, and if you apply from the CRA website, you will get monthly payments. And if you apply from the Service Ontario, you'll get bi-weekly payments, which is for CRA, you get 2,000, and then from the Service Ontario, you get 1,000 bi-weekly. And This is also, there is a certain specific time for this application. It starts from March 15 and it goes until October 3rd, 2020. There are certain tests and eligibilities and criteria also for this program that you actually must meet this program and this criteria to be eligible to get that money. And if you wrongly get this money, which is 2,000 or 500 per week, and then the government comes back to you, you have to provide certain documents. And so far, they haven't announced any penalties or anything, any fines for wrongful applications. But at the same time, as a tax lawyer, I think this is a huge risk, and you're jeopardizing your status at the CRA, and you might be audited for unreasonable, uncertain reasons. In fact, you have to actually prove that you are at least 15-year-old or years or older. You must be Canadian resident. You must reside in Canada. And what does that mean? It means that you need to have a SIN number. And I've been getting these questions from international students or skilled workers that can we apply or not. You can if you have a SIN number. Otherwise, you're not eligible to apply for this program. And also, I get this question that, I was not enjoying my work anymore. It was quite stressful, so I actually quit. Can I apply for SERP? No, you cannot apply. You actually have to be laid off or not being able to work due to the fact that you're ill because of the COVID virus, or you're actually taking care of your children or somebody else, and you're not able to work, then you can apply for SERP and get that 500 per week benefit from the government. Also, there are so many controversies between SERP and EI. As you may know, EI stands for employment insurance. There are certain questions that you're getting that can be applied for SERP while you're getting our employment insurance. No, you cannot apply. You can actually choose either or. And if you're getting employment insurance, as a matter of fact, you can get SERP. But if your employment insurance expired, then you are eligible to get the SERP. And if you have applied for EI or employment insurance in March and you didn't hear back from the CRA about anything, then I have to assure you that your status and your application automatically transfer to SERP, and then you will get that $500 per week. Again, this $500 is taxable. They are not going to deduct the tax now that they are going to pay it to you. But when you're filing your income tax next year, you have to actually declare that. And for now, I have to also emphasize that if you're saying that I'm ill, I have the symptoms, I can't work, the government, as of today, is not going to require any documentations or any medical documents. But what we've been experiencing in the past, and we've been hearing, is that the government is very generous now, and their philosophy is that let them pay now, and then you're questioning them later. So you have to be aware of that they are going to pay you without asking any questions, but the risk that they're coming back in terms of survey or audit and asking you certain questions, that while you think you were eligible to apply for SERP or the other wage subsidies, just provide us certain documents. My point is that you have to be very careful once you're applying for these applications. Sometimes, to be honest, it doesn't really worth it, especially for small business owners that they haven't actually filed their taxes correctly in the past, and now they're claiming that they're eligible and for all these wage subsidies and all these benefits from the government. And I think I mentioned again that the deadline to filing all these for all these benefits, which is SERP, is December 2nd, 2020. Another thing that has been actually is quite interesting, but hasn't been actually quite working, but it doesn't hurt to share it with you, is the work sharing program. It has its own technicalities, and it's quite detailed and specific. And it has its own criteria and tests. For example, you need to have at least 2 employees to have these work sharing programs. You can be a public or private company, and your year in business in Canada, you need to have a year in Canada for at least 1 year. And then once you have all these criteria, you need to sit down with your employee, and it's a matter of negotiation. You have to talk to your staff, and you have to get their consent to actually sign this agreement with them and accept that for a year they can actually get into this work sharing program. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's an agreement. It's a mutual agreement. It has to be signed by the employee and the employer. What are the advantages of this program? From an employer point of view, well, you're not actually to use your resources to retain and hire new staff and train them and teach them about your business. And from an employee perspective, it's great because you're keeping your job, you're getting at least some pay, and you're maintaining and you're keeping your status and skills within your profession. Another thing that I've came across many times in the past few weeks, it's the federal government programs, all the loans that they are actually giving to small business owners. You have to keep that in mind that in the past few sessions and seminars and interviews on TV and different associations, I've actually came across this question that, can we get this 40,000 loan and then use it for other expenses? For instance, for our personal expenses? No, this is actually not working this way. And the CRA has actually on the CRA website, on the Ministry of Finance website, they have emphasized that this loan is specifically for covering all your expenses that you were not able to defer or get any sort of discounts on it. So if you're able to get through this program and talking to your financial advisor at your financial institution, you might keep that in mind that there are certain criteria before applying for this program. As you may know, I'm sure you know that the government announced from the beginning that this is a interest-free loan, 40,000. If you pay this loan by December 31st, 2022, then again, it's up to the discretion of the government, but they have announced that we are going to give you 25%, which is up to 10,000 forgiveness. And if you're not going to pay that by that deadline, which is December 31st, 2020, then it actually transferred to be a normal loan with a certain interest, which I think is 5% interest. Again, in order to be eligible to apply for this program, you need to actually show to your financial institution that you are actually, as of now, in a good standing and good terms with your financial institutions. You don't have any late payments for at least 90 days. You have a payroll for 2019 from 20,000 to 1.5 million. And you have to actually prove these criteria or these tests to be eligible to apply for these programs. And then as I mentioned, when you're applying for these loans, you have to read all the contracts all the way through. And you have to actually acknowledge that you are an eligible candidate to get this mortgage or this loan from your bank. And you're specifically and purposely you're going to use it for your business expenses because you want your business to be operative, to run your business and pay your employees. Other than that, if this is incorrect and you're actually going to use it for your personal expenses, you have to keep that in mind that, again, during this application, there is a point that is referring to, are you giving this opportunity to a CRA auditor to come back to you and ask you for further financial information or further financial statements? So you have to keep that in mind whilst you're applying for these government programs. These programs are fantastic. They are really great to sort of give the economy and the small businesses to run. But at the same time, they are quite risky. And if you're not 100% sure that you are eligible to apply for any of these programs, please get a legal advice. And then once you're 100% sure, apply for a program that you think you're eligible to apply for. Another topic that is quite new and is quite controversial, at least I know between professional Iranian Canadian real estate board, is the rent assistance. It's known as CERCAL because it has a long name, but it stands for Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. This is basically it was an agreement between federal and provincial governments to come up with a solution that prevent all these chaos and these disagreements and these fights between landlord and tenants that we have been encountering from our different perspective and different profession until today. So this is a program that they announced it in April, and then also on April 24th, they expanded it and they gave us more clarifications and more details and who can apply, can you apply, when can you apply. So it has a lot of tests and details that you have to be very careful when you're applying for this program as well. But basically, this is like a loan. It's like a forgivable loan that the government is giving to commercial landlords if the covered commercial landlord is meeting the certain criteria. From a landlord perspective, if you're a landlord and you are registered on, you must be a registered owner of that property. As you may know, there is a registered or title page. You as a landlord must be a registered owner of that commercial property. You need to have a mortgage registered against your property. You need to have a charge to be eligible to apply for this program. And if you don't have the charge or your property is mortgage free, my advice is to reach out to the CMHC and get their advice if they have any alternative for you that your property is mortgage free. As you may know, this program is running by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and you can get certain information in if you don't have mortgage, you can get your questions from CMHC. From a tenant perspective, you actually need to meet the certain areas to go to your landlord and ask for a deferral and ask for this rent assistance. As a commercial, a small business tenant, you must show that your business is either inoperative because it's non-essential, or your business have decreased 70% because of the COVID-19. If you're able to show that, then it's up to the discretion of the landlord to decide to close the tie and forgive the 25% of its benefit or profit for the 3 months begins from April, May, and it ends in June 2020. So once you're meeting all these criteria, the government is going to give, which is shared between provincial and federal government, the government is going to give you the 50% of the mortgage of this loan, and then 25% is up to the tenant to pay, and the other 25%, which is a share of the landlord, is that landlord should forgo its benefit and profit for this time, this critical time, which is beginning from April, May, and ends in June. And then once you actually agree that you are eligible, you have spoken with your tenant, with your landlords, and also vice versa with your tenants, then you actually have to come up with an agreement, which is known as rent forgiveness agreement. And this agreement has certain criteria that you have to cover. You have to promise as a landlord that you are not going to evict your tenant during this critical time, which begins from April, May, and June. And you have to also promise as a landlord in a simple way that you're going to forgo 25% benefit for this 3 months, which begins from April and it ends in May. And then once you have all these criteria mentioned in your agreement, then you apply, and then you will become eligible to get this mortgage, this loan from the government. And then obviously there are so many other programs and line of credits that the government has announced that small business owners can actually apply, go through their financial institutions and get. So it's mortgage and all these charges, line of credits is not my expertise, but I really encourage every one of you who thinks is eligible to get this rent assistance from the government, go to your financial institution and ask for any help that they can actually provide to you. I think I have covered main parts that I've been questioning, I've been asked, I've been encountered, and the gray areas that we have been seeing in the past few weeks. The other things that before I finish my talk, and then I'll ask people to um, ask their questions, and then I'm more than happy to respond, is about the students. As you may know, the government last week announced that if you're a student in Canada, because of the due to COVID crisis, you're eligible to get a student assistance, which is for a student is for like a student who doesn't have any difficulties or is not supporting anybody is 1,275 or 250. And for people who are actually helping somebody else or supporting somebody, or they are disabled, the amount is higher, which is $1,750. Also, there is a child benefits program that they announced that people who are actually under the child benefit program and they are automatically are going to receive as of May or mid-May extra $300. They don't need to apply, and they're automatically going to get it into their bank. Another thing was GST HST credit for low-income people. That was one time. If you're an individual, you were allowed, or you were able to get the $400, and if you were a couple, you were able to get the $600. Again, everything might change because the government is coming up with different announcements, and they're relaxing their programs to be in favor of the small businesses, employed, unemployed people. I think I don't have anything to share at this point, and I'm willing to actually stop sharing my PowerPoint and looking forward to listen to all your concerns and questions at this point.
Okay, great. That was an amazing, informative presentation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
There is a few questions. One of our colleagues has been asking, what if you were paying installment for tax owed for the years of 2019, and now that you can't pay, is it still interest and penalties?
No, then as far as I know, no, there is no interest for penalties because due to the COVID crisis. And it depends on what you're paying. There are certain extensions and deadlines that I highly recommend to go to the CRA's website and see what's the new deadline for your payments.
Okay.
It really depends. I don't know if it's an income or it's a GST, HST, but as far as I know, the CRA initiated this sort of program to assist all the employed, unemployed, and people and businesses. So I'm assuming that there should be a deferral for payment.
I see. Thank you. Another question is, can you please explain the eligibility criteria of the association and the non-for-profit to receive the government funds of COVID-19?
That's a great question. For the nonprofit organizations and charities, in order to be able, it's a very technical aspect of all these government programs. But as far as I know, you need to provide your to be eligible. Let's say for the loan or the wage subsidy for the 75%, you need to provide all your expenses, and you need to actually meet that test, which is the 15% for March and 30% for the months of April and May, to be eligible to apply for that program.
Thank you very much. One other question is, can an individual have an income less than $1,000 a month while under CREB?
Absolutely, yes. Actually, that was one of the announcements that the Prime Minister relaxed the program after a few weeks, and they mentioned that you can get CERB or this benefit plan, despite that you are getting 1,000 each month, at less than 1,000 each month, and again, you're eligible to get that $500 per week.
Another question is, what if you have had done deals prior to the COVID era, and the money is coming now? But currently you're not producing. Would you qualify for the CBRE?
Yes, it's a great question again. The purpose and the philosophy behind this program is for people who don't have any source of fund, any money or any income. In terms of real estate agents or anybody else who's on commission or is getting, let's say you're closing the deal, or you have signed an agreement in March, and now the deal is going to be closed, but during this time you didn't have any activities. Having said that, because you're getting this commission comes to your account or any income comes to your account, again, you're not eligible. You have to sort of be left without any income or any salary to be eligible to get this program. This is for people who have lost their jobs or been laid off.
Okay, so that also means if you have income today, but you're not going to have in a couple of months. And the question reads like this: what happens if you have income in the middle of the next few months? Do you have to cancel your CERB?
Yes. As soon as you get income comes from employment. You need to be employed or you need to be active in a business to get income, right? So once you're active and you're employed, either you're self-employed or you're working for somebody else, it means that you're not laid off, you're not unemployed, and you're actually making some money. And in fact, then you're not eligible for CERB. So if you're going to be eligible, let's say for this segment, because you don't have any income or you're not working, you've been laid off, or your hours been reduced, you can apply for CERB. But for the next segment, if you have income and you're quite occupied and you're getting something more than 1,000, then you're not eligible to get CERB.
I see. Okay. What about you have no income for March and April, but you have a full bank account? Not understanding the question here. Hold on a second. Okay, no, forget that's not a question. If you have
actually, I can mention. I know there is a question about that. I've been receiving this question from builders, contractors, people in construction industry, and obviously from agents. That let's say in 2019, because to get all these wage subsidy programs, you need to actually comply with the test, 15 and 30%. And the question that I've been I've been receiving from clients is that, well, as a builder, I made 500,000 last year, but this year I haven't made anything. I've made maybe like $100,000 or $200,000, and I don't have any test. I do understand that, but in order to be eligible to apply for any of these wage subsidies, you actually have to show that your revenue have declined and use the March 2019 test or use April and May 2019 test for the next segment. But you have to prove. I know it's quite sometimes it's difficult to accept it, but you need to actually provide that you have to comply with the test to show that your revenue actually declined for the months of March, April, and May to be eligible to get these wage subsidies. If you can get these wage subsidies, I recommend to get the SIBA, which is the 40,000 non-interest loan from the bank.
I see. Another question is, any limit to the money you earn? You're earning? I would assume no, but you're the expert.
No. Yes, there is no limit.
Yeah,
it's a matter of comparison, and it's a test to comply with it.
That's right. If you have income from your other investments, are you still eligible for the package?
Which package?
The CERB.
Well, no. You have to be. One thing that I have to emphasize on that the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been repeating it on and on, that I'm going to give you the money based on trust and good faith. And we are going to give you money now, but we are going to question you later. So you don't want to jeopardize your activities, your business activities, and not reporting that you had another income from another investment or another source. And then once the CRA comes to you for a desk audit and ask you for all your financial institutions and your bank account, and then realize that you have another investment, you don't want to jeopardize your status, right? So you have to be very upfront and very honest once you're fighting for any of these government programs. Because I have to reassure you that after this COVID crisis, once everything goes back to somehow normal, we are going to have a huge amount of audits, not only for all these applications, but also for many other audits, especially in real estate transactions, because of the real estate task force that has been implemented in Ontario. So you have to be very mindful of all the aspects before you're applying for any of these programs.
I see. If someone is laid off or employment income has become lower than $1,000, however you are collecting rent, would you still be eligible for the program CERP?
Well, I don't think so. As I previously mentioned, any source of income that you're earning, either it's from your investment properties, rental property, or anything else that makes your life easier to survive and to live, at least to pay you for your grocery, I think you're not eligible to get SIRP. SIRP is a plan or it's a program for people who have been laid off, who have been unemployed, who are desperate to get some sort of income from government.
Another question is actually, I got this question twice. It's asked, what if you're not earning, but you have a full bank account with a good chunk of money in there? Would you qualify for SIRP?
I guess so. I guess that's a great question. I guess so, because the test to get SIRP is that you have to prove either you've been laid off and unemployed, you're self-employed, let's say, and you're not eligible for any of the government programs, only SIRP, and you don't have any other source of income to actually any revenue or any income, so you are eligible to apply. They haven't mentioned anything that, well, your bank account must be empty to be eligible to apply for SIRP. As far as you've been laid off, this COVID-19 has impacted you directly and you lost your job or you became ill or you're taking care of somebody, then you are eligible. These are the tests. These are the basic tests. And as far as you meet these tests, then I believe that you are eligible to get SIRP.
Okay, very nice. So if we find out we are not eligible, how can we stop the payment from the government?
Well, there are certain days that the government or the CRA specifically have been announcing in the past few days that because they've been acknowledging certain or wrong applications. And also I have certain people who have called me and they were panicking that they've filed for SIRP, but they are not actually qualified. The good or the positive point is that so far they haven't announced any penalty on top of repayment. You're not going to pay any fine or any penalty. If you have paid, if you've been paid wrongly because now you're understanding that you're not eligible, you can just contact the CRA or their helpline and let them know that you're not eligible. Or if they're not, because their lines are quite busy, if they're not responding to your question, then you have to pay it for your next tax year.
Okay. An individual received $2,000 from government last month, but he's not eligible this month, and the fund already transferred to his account. What action should he take?
Well, as I mentioned, you either can reach out to the CRA agents and let them know, provide them your information, such as your social insurance number and any other information that they require, and let them know that for the second segment, you were not eligible to get this benefit. And then they will advise you, they guide you that either do not worry, we will take care of it later, or like fill out a form and let us know that you're personally acknowledging that you're not eligible to get this benefit from the government.
I see. So it's basically we have to treat it like a employment insurance. We have to keep reporting every week and for every payment.
Well, yes, they're not vividly saying that you have to report, but as a taxpayer, I think it's beneficial that if you are actually having work for 14 consecutive days, then as a matter of fact, you are not eligible for this program. And then obviously and logically, you have to let them know that you're not eligible to get the SIRP for the second segment.
I see.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to emphasize that that's why I'm saying that through all my interviews and seminars, that please be careful when you're applying, even for SIRP, which is like $500 taxable. Be careful because you don't want to jeopardize your status with the CRA. You don't want to be audited, even at a desk audit, which is quite simple, but it's stressful and sometimes it's very costly. So that's why my message at the beginning of this webinar was that please be careful before you apply. Ask someone's like a tax professional, tax lawyers, tax accountants. Get a opinion before you apply, even for SERP, which is $500 per week.
Another question, I think this is a repeat, but it's just different wording. If we signed an agreement on last December, but the deal is closing in April 2020, are we eligible for SERP?
No.
You're not, because that's
No.
coming in. My question, what would be the penalty if you get caught for doing the wrong thing here? Has they discussed that at all?
Yes. Many times on different occasions, our offices have the opportunity to have conferences with CRA, Canadian Tax Foundations, and different government entities from the Ministry of Finance and others. And it has been, from day one, it has been quite concerned for all the tax lawyers and tax litigators that this is actually going to be a horrendous experience for so many taxpayers, rightly or wrongly, that they have, or somehow they are going to file for certain programs, and then they later on realize wrongfully or with intention or without intention that it was wrong. So the consequence of it is quite heavy. For wage subsidy, as the government announced, is 50% penalty plus the repayment, plus, with no doubt, you will be audited for the past 4 years of your business activity. And for individuals, for SERP, which is the 500 per week, 2,000 monthly, well, there is a chance because the CRA has this power and this discretion, as usual, to reach out to any taxpayer, from individuals to self-employed to corporations to trust, you name it, to require and request certain information. And if you don't have that evidence or documents, then you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. So my message is be careful, do your due diligence, make sure that you are 100% eligible, even for SERP, and then apply. Because the penalty and the consequence and the stress aftermath is quite huge.
Great. If the government eased some restriction this month or next month, do you think the LTB and courts will be in there first?
It's quite unanswered. It's quite uncertain. The landlord and tenant boards are still operating, but for urgent, critical, significant matters. And at the same time, for all these landlord-tenant issues that we have all been facing or hearing and listening, the government and through their policies and their announcements are encouraging all the landlord and tenants to cooperate, to mediate, to negotiate, and come up with a deal or with an agreement, at least for this few critical time. But that doesn't mean that the tenants are actually not going to pay forever. There is no such a thing. The tenants are still obligated to pay, but it's up to the discretion of the landlord to cooperate and give them certain discounts or deferral or whatever that they think it will be beneficial for both parties. But at the same time, as many other entities in the government, the boards are also quite inoperative or quite slow. And usually if you really want to take your matter to the next step and get a court order to evict your tenant, you need to go to certain court, the Superior Court, and they're not actually taking care of these matters at this point because they're not urgent.
Gotcha. A bit of an interesting question. A real estate agent applied for $2,000 that he was eligible for that, did not get paid for 30 days, but he will get commission in the next 5 days. Do you think he was eligible for that $2,000?
Sorry, read that question again.
A real estate agent applies for $2,000 that he was eligible for that, but did not get paid for 30 days. But he will get commission in the next 5 days. Do you think he was eligible for that $2,000? Should he have done it?
Well, this is a very interesting case. Mm-hmm. I still quite didn't clearly understand. And as a tax lawyer, I'm very conservative with my responses. I would say yes or no. I would say no from a very conservative standpoint, that if you're getting any source of income,
it's an automatic no.
It's no. But it really depends. It's case by case. If this individual who is asking this question is not still clear or is not still sure that my answer is actually quite clear, please reach out to me. I will sort of ask you certain questions, and then upon that, you're able to take that 2,000 or return it.
Is there a way to return the money?
Well, as of now, no.
No.
There is no way. They haven't announced, as far as I know, they haven't announced any way to return the money. But obviously, for the next taxation year, there should be certain changes and amendments that then you have this option to say, yes, I've actually received the SERP, but it was wrong and I was not eligible. So there you go. I'm going actually to repaying it. So I think, as far as I know, it's a matter of repayment. They're not asking. They're quite busy. They are very involved with all these programs and in all these urgent plans. So I don't really think that they're looking forward to get the money back. But the repayment is for sure an option for the next taxation year.
I have an interesting question. So let's assume there is a deal that is about to close, but it does not close, and the buyer decides to forfeit their deposit and give it to the seller. Now, does that consider? And this is basically they're not closing the deal.
Yeah.
The seller is receiving like a penalty kind of thing. Is that considered income, and would that fall into this situation where it would consider income?
No, I don't think so. That's not an income. Yeah, that's
seller.
Yes, that's not an income as far as I know. Again, for this question, it's a bit more technical, I would say.
It is.
And I need to think more about it, and then also examine different aspects of the case and the defeat of the contract and the situation of the sellers and the buyer. And then within 10 minutes, we can actually conclude that this individual is eligible to serve, or is actually that return of the deposit or down payment was an income or not. But at this point, I'm not quite sure, so I'm not going to say yes or no.
Okay, gotcha. If you're a business owner or under your own company payroll, by stop paying yourself starting March 15, are you eligible for SERP?
Why did you stop? Because you're you're a non-essential. You need to have a reason. Like, you don't need to. If you are, yes, that's a great, fantastic question. If you are actually an employee of your company and you are on payroll, not dividend, you're on payroll, and then your business, let's say you are you're a restaurant owner and your restaurant had to shut down because of the COVID crisis, so you don't have any revenue. So as an employee of that corporation, yes, you're eligible to get SERP, but it depends on why your business is not inoperative. Was it voluntary, or was it because the crisis? Was it because it was a non-essential?
I see. But if you just choose to stop because it was convenient, then the government wouldn't like that.
Well, obviously, I would say yes, because everything is very logical. You have to prove that you've been directly impacted by COVID crisis, and that's why you're being affected, your business or you personally being affected by that. If you are, same thing with SERP, that as an individual, if you quit your job because you just like to stay home and do nothing, you're not eligible to get that. You have to be laid off. They're not going to ask you these documents now, but promise in future there would be a survey and they will come back to you and ask you for these basic documents.
I think you have to also apply the fairness too, that the government is now helping you out. You shouldn't be taking advantage of them.
Exactly. I was listening to the news last night, and the Prime Minister was announcing that we are trusting you, and if everything is based on a good faith. Please do not misbehave, and please do not abuse the system.
I agree.
And they're serious about it. They're very serious about it. If you're abusing the system, if you're misleading, if you're misinforming, if you're reporting wrong information, as a tax lawyer with like a few years of experience, I would say that the penalties are really high. And not only you have to pay, but you will be impacted. You'll be flagged by the CRA, and you have to go through certain audits and certain experience that I don't think any business owner wants to go through that.
Another question. If the tenant left the country before the termination of the lease, May 20th, and not cooperative to clean or let us show what is the landlord's right?
Well, again, it's a landlord-tenant issue. You may actually reach out because landlord-tenant board have this the line that you can actually call them. This might be a very critical, urgent question, or might not be. I'm not a landlord-tenant expert, but as far as I know, it's for now because everything is quite slow and inoperative. It's too bad. It's too unfortunate for the landlord, but at the same time, I don't see any options for the landlord unless sort of talking, negotiating, or getting at least a writing permission in writing from the tenant to enter the property or the unit, hire somebody, and then later on invoice the tenant.
What about the tenant did not pay the full amount of rent for the next 2-3 months, and then they announced bankruptcy? How the landlord can collect his rent? He can't.
Okay, so basically, claiming bankruptcy, it's really easy to say, I'm going through bankruptcy. It's really easy, but it's very technical, and it's not really easy to be bankrupt. These might be like some sort of how should I say it? It's just a way of not paying the rent. But as I mentioned in during my presentation, all these crises and these critical situations doesn't mean that you as a tenant should not pay. The landlords must be cooperative and compassionate about this situation and defer the rent, give some discount. But that doesn't mean so far that any tenant is getting this mercy from the landlord that they don't need to pay. Again, bankruptcy, I don't think depends on which tenant, if it's a commercial or versus residential. Going through bankruptcy requires its own criteria, and it takes time, and you must be actually chosen to be bankrupt. So it's not that really straightforward to be bankrupt, but it's a matter of it's a very difficult situation. And again, I can't clearly and vividly comment on that. But again, my advice is to reach out to the tenant, negotiate, do something that is beneficial for you at the end of the day.
One last question. If a business owner stops paying himself to be able to pay other employees, would that be a legitimate reason to apply for CERB?
I don't think so. It's a very technical, factual question. I still have to get certain reasons from the person, the individual who's asking these questions, to be able to say yes or no, and why and how, what are the other options for you to get benefit or instead of CERB. So I can't quite be comfortable to respond to this question. But if this person is willing to get the 100% confirmation, please reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you.
Okay, great. Very informative presentation. A lot of questions was answered. I greatly appreciate your time. We are at 58 minutes. If there is any other questions, guys, please put it in as soon as possible because we are going to end it at 1 hour. Anything else you would like to add, Ms. Ghazi?
Well, no, thanks for the opportunity. And I would also mention that I really feel obligated to help my community and my Iranian people, at least in Toronto. And I will be more than happy to answer your questions. You can reach out to me or my team at EY Law, either via phone or email, and allow me 24 hours to call you back or to reply to your emails. But having said that, I am more than happy to, at least in this critical, unprecedented time, to help my community, and I really mean that.
Beautiful. We greatly thank you for your time and beautiful presentation, very informative.
My pleasure.
I'm going also to introduce our next speaker, Mrs. Victoria Terrelot, who is going to be speaking about DISC personality next week. Be sure to log in to Pikra next time to have another session of webinar. All right. And that's it, people. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for participation. It was great. And we all learned something today.
Fantastic. I wish everybody a fantastic weekend.
Same to you.
We'll see you again.
Have a great day.
Merci. Bye bye.
خداحافظ شما.